Hey folks, Stumpy here. This is the introduction and tutorial video for my config editor and mod database, 7days2mod.com. You can find the official forums thread under the modding tools section. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to post them in here. So let's go to the site and have a quick run through of the features. So, the home page is the vanilla config of 7 Days to Die, has everything back as far as version 12.5, and to switch between versions simply click on the different version and it will change to that URL. At any time you can return to the default latest version by clicking on either under main menu vanilla or the mod library, and of course anywhere you go to within the site you can return back to that splash page through the mod home button. So first of all, there's the account info and save mods page, which will list all of your mods that you are an admin owner for. If you've saved a version to a mod that you're not an admin for, they'll show up here, and then any draft versions that you've created along the way will also show up here. You can go directly to those by simply clicking on the link. As you can see, the mod name is 7D2D for the default, and then if it's a draft version it will have draft, then your Steam ID, then a few random numbers. The download button will change to save draft if you're in a draft mode. So let's go back to the default version. The next section to look at would be to change mod settings. Any mod that you create and have admin rights to, which for the default one is myself, you can come in here and change any of its settings. So for example, you wanted to change 7D2D to something else, you just simply click on that, enter it in there, and as long as it doesn't already exist you'll be able to update the name of your mod, or at least the URL. The current default version is what the program will point to if you don't include the version on the end here. The banner image can be any either relative path or a full HTTP URL. If you wanted to point to a banner on a different page, you can also sort of width and height need to be 1024 and 100 for it to fit. It will resize it if it's not those dimensions. If you ever need a image uploaded, just message me. The version save mode, you have the option of admin only or public. If it's public, a non-admin is able to save a version to the mod directly. It will prefix the word public and then their Steam ID before the version name that they give it, so that you can tell them apart from your official versions. The admin overwrite can be enabled or locked, which means that even an admin, if it is enabled, if it is locked, won't be able to overwrite an existing version, whereas if it's enabled they can make changes and then save it back to an existing version if they want. The splash page menu has three options, either full menu, modded files only, or no menu. The modded files only one will show a list on the splash page which only includes modified files from the default version. And lastly, the splash page content editor is a simple WYSIWYG editor which you can type in whatever you want here, including adding links and images. You can view the source code if you want, and so it's just a simple editor to change the front page when people visit your mod. Under admins, currently the add new admin button and pass ownership remove admin, all of these buttons down here aren't currently functioning, so that will be coming in one of the next updates. If you create a mod and you wanted to add another admin, just send me a message with their Steam ID and I can add that into the file manually. Under the official mod versions, these are the versions that a mod has saved, or an admin has saved to the mod rather. So as you can see, I've uploaded the various versions over the last few months, and you can also get a list of how many downloads have been made of that mod. The size is the disk space that the mod takes up, which for a full version is about 60 meg. That includes both the config folder and the prefabs. Right, moving on. We won't cover XPath just yet because that's probably a bit more advanced. So under mod library we have a few of the most popular mods that I've uploaded to the site. If you're an owner of one of these mods, feel free to message me if you wanted to get admin privileges if you haven't already been given them. And also, if you have a mod that you wanted to have added to this list, once again just message me through the official forums and we can add that on for you. Lastly, we've got second to last rather, we've got the config section, which is all of the config folders XML files. Each of these links pretty much takes you to a individual file, the exception being loot, which is broken down a bit further because it was such a large section. Right, so first of all we're going to have a look at, actually before we do that, and we have also prefabs. So the mod prefabs, when you're in the vanilla one, will list all of the prefabs. Remove the filters, which thanks to Hal's editor, I've been able to export some info which includes the size of the prefab and its height, and then if we go into the prefab itself we can also see an image that I've added for some of them and a list of all of the blocks that are included in that prefab and various loot containers that are attached to those. There's a bit of a bug at the moment in that a loot container that extends another one doesn't show the loot container in this list. Right, so going back to the configs, we have the blocks, which is probably the slowest loading page because there's 1342 blocks in the vanilla version, and as you can see it takes a little while to load. If we scroll right to the bottom we can see it took about 2.5 seconds to generate the page, plus once it's finished generating it has to load in all the JavaScript. Actually, while we're down here, the editors on the site, the text editor is powered by CodeMirror and the GUI editors are powered by JavaScript called Xenomi. If you're ever interested in checking out those, the links are down the bottom there. Right, so let's cover some basic parts of the block table view. Firstly, we have the GUI table, which is a nicely formatted and searchable GUI section. So we wanted to find all the blocks that have the word CNT at the start of it or anywhere within it. You simply type it into the filter and it will filter that section. You can do multiple searches, so you wanted all containers that have wood as a material. You can reset the filters up here, and you can also sort the table. If you wanted to do sort on multiple columns, simply hold down shift. So if we can go name and then secondary sort on texture, obviously that won't help. Let's try material first, and then secondary sort on name, so you get all of the materials in order, and then under each of those the name will be sorted as well. The XML view is a non-interactive view of the XML code, which can take a little while to load for the blocks file once again because it's such a large file. And of course each node, once it's finished loading, can be collapsed down. The XPath by index is the XPath code that you would use to find that file directly, but we'll cover that later once we go over the XPath section, if it ever gets finished with loading. While that's going, we'll just pop open the code editor in a second tab. The code editor under the table view section will list the entire view. Why is it so slow today? There we go. And it is a nicely formatted and color coded text editor, pretty much the same as Notepad as far as able to do things like copying an entire section and pasting it back in. So now we've got 2 copies. You can click on the discard changes, which is simply a reload of page, or you can just hit refresh to get rid of any changes, or hit save changes if you want to keep them. And lastly, the node list section is quite handy in identifying various things, like say for example you wanted to see all of the blocks that had the class workstation, of which there are 4 of them. You can also click on these links to do an XPath search and see the code that way. Right, there we go, so the XML view is loaded. You can do all sorts of collapsing and stuff, but the real interesting part is once we go into the detailed view, which you access through the GUI table. So say we wanted to have a look at the stone block in detail, simply click on stone. Now once you have the detailed view open, you have the GUI view, XML edit, GUI and XML code. So these 2 are pretty much the same as the front page, just non-interactive versions. However, the GUI view does allow you to click on items that are related to this, like the stone material for example. You can click on that to see the details of that, which has a list of things such as blocks of that material, items of that material. You can also go to the XML code section, which is once again just a text editor. You can clone the block, which will create a copy of this block and append the word _clone to it. You can delete it, you can add a new block. Anytime you make a change, it will pop up the save changes or the discard changes button, and remove the clone and add new button. You can do all sorts of bad formatting, include random characters. When you click save, it will format the text nicely for you. And eventually, once you make your first edit, the version will change from whatever version you're on to have a draft version. One thing to keep in mind, if you open multiple tabs like I was just before, if you open a tab with the version before you change to draft mode, then making changes on those different tabs will cause problems, because you'll have multiple drafts created. So you're best to make an edit to go into draft mode before you start opening multiple tabs. Also, once you're in actually draft mode doesn't matter, but anyway, you can also edit the code through the XML edit or GUI. Basically the same thing with just a different way of formatting. I prefer the XML GUI because it makes nice little squares around your code. Now anywhere in here you can click on the different parts that will pop up context sensitive menus, such as changing, in this case, the ID to the maximum ID +1, or the next unused ID, 17 in this case. You can also have a selection of all of the different options that are found for property names under the block section. You can also create new ones if they don't exist. And the value I currently is have it just set to do a text editor. However, if you go to some of them, for example, actually probably not under blocks but under other sections, it will let you have some context sensitive drop downs for the different values and settings. Now if we go over to the, where is it, recipes page, because the recipes can have multiple outputs of the same item, I've also included a recipe link to the recipe itself. So clicking on the output will take you to that item, whereas clicking on the recipe link will take you to the recipe itself. So if we go to the one for 9mm bullets, once again XML GUI, it will give you the editor which lets you change various ingredients, change the account. You can use your mouse wheel to scroll up and down, or you can use the arrows, or you can type it in, all entirely up to you. It will give you all of the options. So currently there's no craft area, so you could click on that, click on this, choose one of the options, easy as that. And you can see craft area has already been added, so it's disappeared from this list. As you add each one in, it takes it out of the list. You can also add new ingredients by clicking on here. Now the validators will tell you when something is not correct. So in this case, ingredient name must have a valid block or ID, block or item. If we click on there, we can choose one, but however, if you typed in something that didn't exist, in this case it doesn't let you. Some of them will let you choose items that don't exist, and it will pop up another different validation error telling you that that block doesn't exist. If we go to the mixer, in this case we have multiple little tables for the different sections of the mixer, and to edit the entire mixer you simply use the code editor on the table view. However, if you wanted to edit, say, a specific prefab rule, Wilderness POIs sounds good. Eventually, and if we go to, so once again, content sensitive doesn't let you choose an invalid setting. However, if you go to the code section, you can in fact type in invalid settings there, and once you save that, if you go back to the GUI view, you'll see a null reference error. If the text is blue, it means it's okay. If it's red, it means it goes to something that doesn't exist, and if you click on it, it will tell you that it doesn't exist. If we then go into the GUI, I don't think I've enabled the validators on the mixer yet, so it doesn't give you the little exclamation mark. However, if you click on there, it will pop up the drop down, which you can then go through and set it to something that is correct. Right, and under the different mods, you can once again do all of the editing. If you make a few edits, then you can, how about we go into, so we wanted to add another recipe. In this case we will add a alternative recipe for one of the blocks. What's going to come up first? So we wanted to add an alternative recipe for which one? Hello Cream. Simply go into the recipe and clone it, or you could type one entirely from scratch. You can also do all of the editing in Notepad, and then go into the XML code view and just paste the entire file in there. So if we clone that recipe, eventually it will cause an error. Okay, apparently I haven't done the recipe one properly. So yeah, as you can see, there's still a few bugs to be worked out on the site. As I get a bit of time, I'll go through and make a note of all of the problems I encounter. Most of them I have noted already, so it's just a matter of finding the time to do the editing. Recipe is probably not a good example. How about items? So we wanted to make a new item. How about a, so this is currently under Valmod still, so we'll find Val's admin nailgun, and we'll create a clone of this. So when you create the clone, it should give it a new ID, which is not an existing one, and change the name which it didn't. Okay, oh, apparently only blocks do that. So we'll just call it that for now. We'll just check the items that might have not redirected properly. So if we go to the admin, once again as a filter, yeah, apparently the clone didn't work. Awesome. So there's a few bugs still. However, if you've made some changes, you can then go save draft. Now, because I'm a super admin and an admin for this mod, I can save to the mod. However, if you weren't an admin, it would pop up your Steam username there. You can change that to whatever you want. The save version is simply a different version number so that you can have multiple versions under one mod. The set as default and publish buttons, set default will change the default mod so that when you only have base URL and no version included, that's the version that it will point to, and the publish mod button doesn't currently do a lot. It will eventually be used as a placeholder system with the splash page. So how about we just create a new mod and save it. We will then be redirected from this Valmod draft version to Valmod 2, which you'll then have full admin rights to do whatever you want with. So if we go to buffs, where is it there? So in the buffs table view, we can set it in, it happens in Valmod, but also in vanilla. There's a few null reference areas. One is that the first aid large causes is pointing to the buff name. It should actually be pointing to the item, which is the first aid kit. And also under the mutex, there's hot and cold buffs that don't actually exist. So it's one way of checking your mod, make sure you haven't misspelt any item names or anything like that. Can be quite helpful, especially for things like the mixer where you've got a whole heap of prefab names. Sometimes you miss the capitalization or similar, and it can cause your game to not work, and this is a good way to find it. So once you're finished making all your changes, simply download the mod. Now I'm going to save it to my Steam install folder, and if we go show folder, I always like to create a copy when I'm installing a mod of the game itself. Given it's only 3 gig, you can afford to have quite a few copies and it won't take up too much space on your disk. And once that finishes, we will rename the folder. Copy our zip into it, or move, and you simply go extract here and overwrite, and your mod is now installed. So if we have a look in the zip file, you can see that it has the full path of the folders, so that you can just extract it into the root folder of your game and it will find where it's supposed to put anything. So one other way that you can create a mod is to upload an existing mod. You can drag and drop the content of the zip file, or you can use zip files or just plain files. If you use a zip file, when it uploads, it will then extract that zip file and delete it. So even though it says error here, it says zip extracted file removed there. That just means that it's extracted the files from the zip and then deleted that zip. If you refresh the page, you'll see a full list of what's actually been extracted. Alright, so once you've uploaded your files, For some reason it didn't include the mods folder, because there wasn't any. Anyway, you can move the files to a draft version, and then once again, just when it changes, click on the save button to save it to a proper version for editing and downloading. I'm going to change the way that the upload feature works, so instead of moving it to a draft, you save it directly to a mod, which will streamline the process a bit, and also allow for, if you save to an existing mod, the ability to add the files to it rather than completely replace the mod. Alright, I guess that pretty much covers the basics of the site. So we'll go quickly into the XPath library. In time I'll be adding a bunch of XPaths here which do different functions. At the moment the main one is the XPath search, block and item name search. It's a way of searching for blocks and items with case insensitive search, and it gives you the XML code of each of the ones that had, for in this example, grass in the name. XPath is quite powerful in that you can use it to navigate through your XML. It also allows you to do things like append, remove, replace, or insert before the nodes that it finds, and that system is called Xaction, which is what the editors itself are based on. In the case of the editors, it's simply using append or replace in most cases. So another good page to look at is the entity classes. In this case it has the extended info, so Bloated Walker, for example, under Valmod extends Zombie1. All these bits that are in italics with the little X are properties that have been inherited from Zombie1 rather than defined under the Bloated Walker itself. The blocks and items page also had that feature, however it was causing the site to slow down a large amount, so until I've made that more efficient I've disabled that for now. If we go into the Bloated Walker, we can see that the extended properties from Zombie1, ones with the strike through, have been overwritten in the Bloated Walker, whereas all the other ones are part of what make up the Bloated Walker. If you wanted to include the info that has the size and height and blocks list in your prefabs, you can simply run Hell's editor, and then under the prefab editor is the global prefab functions, generate XML, info XML, that will create a subfolder in the prefabs folder with all of the prefabs underscore info.xml, and simply upload that along with your prefabs and it will include this info for you. And that pretty much covers the basics of the site. Any of the editing features you need to be logged in through Steam to access them. The site itself doesn't store any of your login info, it is all done through Steam. Same system that Alec uses for his map view and 7 Days to Die servers listings are used for logging in as well, so it's impossible for someone to hack the site and gain access to your info that way. Alright, well, thanks for watching.